Welcome, everybody. I feel like every episode I tell you, man, this is such an exciting episode for the bottom line. But truly, this one is unique. It's dear to my heart because it's seldom that you get a Gen Zer, a true Gen Zer that is on fire dealing with life, willing to say, hey, man, let's have a real intellectual conversation about what's going on, what I've been through, for the sake of helping others. I think we're in such a selfish society today. Everything is about me, about how people want to be treated, how they want to be named and recognized, and how culture needs to shape around them. And then I met Jeff Abbott, unbelievable young man you're about to meet. And it was never about him. It was about, hey, these are the struggles I have, but I think we can do something. I think we can share an impact. I think we can affect others. Jeff, welcome on the bottom line.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
You are literally right now in that move from high school to college, playing high school basketball. You're going to go play ball in college. You're in the process that so many teens go through of now finding a roommate for college, and that world. I think just navigating high school, I want to talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I want to get to some real challenge, some obstacles that you face that you're beating. And I think your voice is essential to hear in this hour for so many. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an extremely stressful time for anybody, especially my age, trying to transfer from really going from high school to college. It's completely, you're going out into the open. You're venturing into deeper waters. For every one of us, especially high schoolers, when you go into that different area, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. We have these ideas, whether it's media, whether it's television, what our parents tell us, what older siblings tell us, but really once you get there, you don't know what's going to happen. And the thing that I was able to learn, I'm the youngest of three. I had two older sisters that got to go to college. One of them went to a small Catholic college, Spring Hill, and the other one went to a big public school, A&M. And I'm going to Ave Maria University, which is a small Catholic college in Florida. And the thing is, what I was able to gather, or what I was able to learn from them, was different. And I was able to learn different lessons where one of my sisters, when she went, it was as if she was having to find herself for the first time. And the thing was, she was the oldest, so she had all this pressure on her from the get-go. She had to care for me and my older sister. She had to do all these things, but she had to find herself for the first time alone, and it was as if she was completely disconnected. And I saw that, and I saw the partying, and I saw all that, and we didn't go through a very easy time growing up. There was a lot of trauma, there was a lot of struggles, and the way that we decided to deal with this, even with my sister at a Catholic college, even with me and my sister going to a Catholic high school, Credo Catholics, we were very born into a devout group of people. The thing was, we didn't turn to God immediately. That wasn't the first thing. We turned to letting our flesh, what our flesh craved, which was quick fixes. And what we were able to find was drinking and smoking and those kind of things that created a environment where we thought that we were safe. And this is what I see with a lot of people my age, where life gets really, really difficult. And especially for our age, with all of the media and everything that isolates us in a way where whether it's on TikTok, whether it's on Instagram, where we get into these cycles of nonstop scrolling, and we get to a point where we're really just isolated in our own rooms, especially with COVID and all this stuff that really just detained us in. And then we have this need to go out and party and to go and share with this group of friends. But instead of having deep intellectual conversations like this and talking about the struggles that we're going through and the trauma that's affected us and all of these things, instead we go and we want to smoke and drink so that we can feel a sense of happiness. But we confuse happiness with pleasure. And that's a big thing, because I like the idea of using fast food as an example, because that, when somebody says, oh, I love having a burger, it makes me so happy. It doesn't make you happy. It brings you pleasure. It's something that's very easy, very quick. But once you're done with it, most of the time you feel worse about yourself, especially if you're dealing with, body issues and stuff, where if you go and you get a fast food burger, it's going to make you feel pleasurable at first because the taste and how easy it is to get it, and it takes 5 minutes. You go through the drive-thru and you get it. That's pleasure, but that's not happiness. You're searching and yearning for something to fill the void in your heart. And that's something that I struggled with for the longest time, was there was this void in my heart that I was trying to fulfill, and I didn't know where to go. I didn't know where to look. It was like God was always there. I knew God. I knew of God, but I didn't know God. I didn't know Jesus. I knew of him, but I didn't have a personal relationship with him. He wasn't the first thing or the first person that I talked to in the morning, and not the last person that I talked to. It was always social media. It was always scrolling on Snapchat, scrolling on Instagram.
But I think you said it earlier, right? It's in the middle of that trial moment, you ran, as you put it, to quick fixes, right? Versus to God. And I think that's the difference between knowing of God, following him, or knowing him. And I think if I know somebody, even just as a friend, I can, in the middle of a trial, have the freedom to talk to that friend and say, hey, can you help me real quick? I need something, right? Or versus, yeah, I kind of know him, but not like that. And people say that all the time. Well, this guy's your friend. Do you know him? How do you know him? Well, not quite like that. I was watching a video the other day, and Ronaldo, soccer player, incredible soccer player, they were asking him, do you know Messi? Lionel Messi. And he goes, of course I know Messi. We're the two greatest soccer players in the same era, right? And how rare is that? And then Ronaldo says, but I've never had a meal with him. And they go, wait a minute, how's that possible? You've never even, at all the award shows, he goes, no, we've never even shared a meal, but I would like to one day. And then he says, I don't know him like that. So I know his stats. I know him. We wave at each other. We even text each other. But in the middle of a trial, he wouldn't call Messi.
Right.
No way.
I think that's the same thing with Jesus.
Exactly.
How many of us would have a meal with him? How many of us would sit down with him when we're at our lowest and weep with him and cry
Trust,
with him?
take that time, build that relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
How many of us are going to do that? It's really powerful in showing that Jesus is the epitome of love. He is the epitome of love and peace. And that's what we're yearning for and looking for. But a lot of us feel as though we don't deserve that. And that comes from trauma. That comes from shame that we put on ourselves.
Condemnation.
Yeah. And that's not from God. That's not from Jesus. That is not a quality that they contain, is to condemn us. It is not. It is the devil. And that's what the devil will do. And something that really stuck out to me a long time ago that I heard was, the devil will tempt you with worldly desires, with worldly temptations, convince you that it will give you everything that you want. So much so that when you do, indulge in these things, you will feel that pleasure. But then once you do, the devil will look at you and laugh at you and say,
shame you. Yeah, of course.
How could you do this?
Yeah.
How could you fall?
Yeah. I thought you were a Christian.
Right.
Look at what you just did. You're not. And this is the voice. There's actually a tactic that, non-related to this conversation, but that's a tactic that predators use in human trafficking, is they will literally coerce a child to do something and then immediately turn around and say, see, you're a bad person.
Yeah.
You wanted this. You're really a bad person. And it psychologically, it breaks a human being completely. And I think that's what social media has done. I want to ask you a question. I didn't think I was going to ask you this. I was going through some profiles the other night, and I was looking at, and my phone's not with me, it's somewhere, but I wanted to show you. And I had this weird, bizarre feeling. I came out of looking at some social media profiles, and I was studying a trend, right? I was looking into trends. I do that a lot, of saying, okay, human behavioral science, the trend. And in the middle of this trend, I had a call come in, and I snapped out of this mode into the other mode, and I caught myself going, whoa, something's not right. Right. And I recognized in that moment that there is almost a trance conditioning into just scroll. And it's like you're checking out of, almost completely checking out of reality, going into like a space continuum, time warp, and you lose hours. And what I'm finding is, what I realized from that is how many people get stuck there mentally. And now they go live their lives in that place, if that makes sense. They're not snapping back into reality, clarity of thought, but it's almost like it's a hypnosis almost. It's like a false narrative hypnosis, and they carry that into their life. And then I'm looking at some decisions people making and go, oh yeah, I can see that. I can see how they can get stuck in that narrative. I think it's toxically, violently powerful, but destructive. So,
and the dangerous thing is, there's an algorithm, a very specific algorithm that's extremely intelligent in giving you exactly what you want to see over and over again. And the thing is, a lot of people know the algorithm. They know, okay, so if I keep on watching this video, I'm going to see more of it. But what's more dangerous is the people who aren't aware of the algorithm, that they think that these videos are just popping up randomly and they're like, wow, this is so incredible. Like, and that's where it becomes problematic, is with the issue of pornographic material, where something will pop up where it's a woman in scant clothing and it could be just a child. I was talking to an 8th grader at the basketball courts the other day, and I was explaining to him the algorithm of how the more you watch a video, the more it's going to pop up. And he goes, oh, is that why I see pretty ladies all the time on my TikTok feed? And I was like, that's exactly why. And the thing that was I was making sense of, because he was talking to me too, and I was having a conversation with him about how pornography is not something that I want to be engaged in anymore, how it's something that has kind of taken over my life at times. And he was talking about it too, where it's something that he doesn't like, or he didn't know that it was wrong, and he was doing it. So we had this conversation, and he told me, he was like, all right, I'm going to stop doing it. I'm going to stop doing it completely. And I had to explain to him where it's like, it's not just that easy. You know, it's a mental addiction.
It's a drug.
It's a drug. It truly is. And that's the thing with the algorithm, is you can try and say, all right, I'm never going to watch pornography again, ever again. And then what happens when one of those videos just pops up in your feed?
It's a trigger.
It's a trigger, and your whole nervous system is going to fire up. And the thing is, it's something traumatizing, especially for you brought up that statistic, which really struck me, of today's day and age, the average age to watch pornography for the first time is 8 years old.
Yes.
And that's traumatizing to a kid. I was 7 years old when I watched it for the first time, and I didn't really understand what I was looking at, but it made my nervous system fire up. Everything kind of got tingly. I got an erection. Like, all these things started happening where I was confused. I didn't know what I was feeling, but it was something that was interesting.
Your body responded chemically.
Right.
And this is the conversation I have with people all the time. This is why it's so detrimental introducing children to sex through pornography. You couldn't, even if you tried, and you spoke to me about that first moment when a friend said, hey, come watch this.
Yeah.
And you explained to me how that happened on a computer. You couldn't block the physiological reaction in your body, the neurons firing. You couldn't shut it off. You couldn't not get tingly, not get excited. It's not how it works. Right. So it's going to happen. And the second it does, it's a foreign feeling that's semi-euphoric, semi-strange, weird, but it's immediately almost addictive.
And the thing is too, when that happens, kids are automatically going to be intrigued by new things in general. Yeah. And when they do that, they want to show their friends. It's the same thing when you learn how to jump. You're going to want to show your friends how to jump. It's just something fun. And same thing happened to me. That's why my friend showed it to me, and that's why I went and showed it to my other friends. But the thing about that is, just from that moment alone, it wasn't like I wanted to go show my parents, because this was something between the kids. Like, this is just. But
you also know innately, there's as those things are happening in your body, where things are being prematurely this is 7. We're 5 years pre-puberty.
Right.
Way too early, right? And it's like a hyperspeed. You also immediately know that this is not something I want to show my parents, because there's that inside, and that's what I call this God-shaped hole in every human being when we're born, to be reunited with God, righteousness, justice, and can't show this to my parents, but I'm gonna show my friends, and there's that push-pull, and immediately now you have a 7-year-old in a highly compromised position in life, not equipped mentally, emotionally, physically to deal with that kind of stressor, and that's why children, it's destructive. And so you were 7.
And even my friend at that moment, he asked me, because we were watching sex, and when he asked me, he said, "What if I stuck it in your butt?" And I heard that, and I immediately in my brain, I knew. Even at 7, I was like, "No, that's what do you even mean? Like, what?" Like, I wasn't even connecting the dots. But the thing is, as a kid, you don't come up with those ideas on your own. That's not something that happens.
It's not natural.
Right. In 7-year-old me, who something like that had never happened, I was like, immediately like, what? Like, I remember like, what do you mean? No. And so
how old was he?
He was 8. So we were the same grade, but he was just a year older.
Wow. So someone showed him.
Right.
And it's just like, hey, I equate it this way. Taking porn to somebody and introducing them into that world is like saying, hey, can I introduce you to a demon? And I promise he's going to be your friend, and it's going to feel great. But it's ultimately just destructive, and it's a vicious cycle because we are sexual. We are wired to reproduce,
right.
But now you just, it's like I it's so shocking to me. I ask people to say, well, porn doesn't hurt anybody. I go, well, number one, it hurts everybody. The one watching probably the most, and those indoctrinated and the trafficking and all the things in there, and it's take 57 and it's not natural and nothing you see in porn is real. You can't reproduce it and all that kind of stuff. But I say to those guys this, I said, okay, do me a favor. What do you drive? And the guy will say, well, I drive a Hellcat, or I drive a Mustang, or I drive a F-150 pickup truck. And I go, do me a favor. Please give your keys to a 7-year-old, right? Pull onto the interstate where cars are going 80 miles an hour, and then get in the passenger seat and let the 8-year-old drive the vehicle and do an on-ramp onto the interstate. And immediately they tell me, that's super dangerous. Right. I go, less than giving him porn. Less than giving him porn. It's that insane. And then their response is, well, he's not ready to drive. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, he's not ready to drive. He's not ready for sex. He's not ready to see these images. He's not ready.
Right.
Right. And that's not even internal. That's a vehicle and driving. It's a skill that you learn. We're talking about sex here, where it's in your wiring system. It's in your brain.
Because at the core of what sex is, it's something good. It's procreation, which is making new life.
Yeah.
There's a reason why it's something that everybody is intrigued by, because if it wasn't, then we wouldn't have life. God told us to procreate and be fruitful, but it makes sense why the devil, the evil one, wants to attack that at its core. Wants to attack the children too, so that they grow up in a society that is over-sexualized. And that's the thing that I'm seeing, especially in my generation, is how everything is becoming sexualized. Where,
talk to me a little bit more about that, because I in our documentary Sex Nation, the poster's right behind you, right? I talk about how, and it's called Sex Nation because that's what we have become, a sex nation where almost anything. There's companies selling water using sex.
Yeah.
Sex, it's just all sex. So how prevalent is sex in your culture, in your age group? Not just the act of sex to people, but sexualizing things, innuendos, slang, slurs. How pervasive is it really? It's something that's talked about just about all the time. And the thing is, for me to like try and pinpoint and say, oh yeah, that's something bad, it's become normalized to the point where you wouldn't think it's bad until you bring it to light and say something about it. So like a good example is the way that guys have started to interact with one another, because from the age of 8, you're looking at sex, you're looking at porn over and over again, you're looking at penetration, all this stuff, like butt slaps and all this stuff. So over time, I've noticed guys will just start, like, it's really weird. It's like somebody will go and touch their toes while stretching, and somebody will go and slap their butt or stick their finger up there, like in a joking way, a comical way. And the amount of homosexual jokes that will come up and pop up all the time, like it becomes like all of these kind of just like little instances throughout the day, where what it's doing is it's normalizing it in your brain. And it's been doing this since we were 8, where it's like, and that's the thing, that's what comedy is. It's making light of the darkness. So we were shown, almost all of us were shown some form of pornography at a young age, which was detrimental to our growth, which was detrimental to our psyche. So what we're trying to do is make light of that. We're trying to make jokes and trying to, be able to relate on this, because we're not going to sit down and talk about how it's destroying our lives, how it's taking over these things. But in the process, actually perpetuating it.
Yes.
And making it worse, because you're desensitizing culture to it. And I'd argue this, those little nuances frequently through the course of the day, it's not even the act of sex, it's innuendo, it's a butt slap, it's a wink, it's a comment, it's a joke, builds relationship with it. It normalizes it. And that's actually what God wants us to do with him.
Yeah.
Is a lot of conversation, small conversation, big prayers, small prayers, little references. Oh yeah, Jeremiah says God knew me before he crafted me in the womb. We don't talk like that as Christians. We don't bring a God culture into small innuendo of just a Christ culture.
Right.
It's now a porn culture.
Yeah.
It's a sex culture. And that's problematic. It's because you don't just turn around from that, because it's addictive.
Right.
And it is pleasurable. Right? It's not healthy. It's not happiness. I think you said that so well. I mean, it is go eat yourself a nice MSG burger,
Right.
and it feels great, the dopamine, and then you hate it
Right.
2 days later, right? And so that's the case. I mean, so talk to me a little bit more, if you can, Jeff, particularly about guys. What is the conversation right now in your age group, your school, maybe other schools, around this whole trans movement of guys can be girls, guys in girl sports? I mean, is that being discussed in that age bracket? Is there an opinion there?
It's really a lot more just jokes is what the way that we talk about anything serious. So I would say a lot of the times that we talk about it, it's to poke fun at it or to make fun, but there feels like there's this barrier, and this is just across the board, where it's like you can't cross a certain threshold. You can't make too serious of a comment. Like, so making a joke of like one thing that I would bring up, or somebody would bring up as a joke, is like how the amount of testicular injuries in women's sports is increasing, and how like we would kind of poke fun at that and like kind of make light of it, but we would never seriously talk about, okay, what is this doing to the children? Like, we wouldn't talk about what is this going to do to our children, or what is this going to do to the children down the road, or like how is this affecting our brains like in this developmental stage. But the other issue is like there's a clear divide. The thing with the difference between girls and guys, and I know this because having sisters, and it feels as though guys are a lot more likely to not have, I wouldn't say as much sympathy, but like girls, if there was a transgender a man turned into a girl, the girls would be much more likely to accept. It's the same way with a homosexual male, where they'd be much more likely to accept and be like, okay, we love you, like we love you how you are. Except for with guys, it would be, yeah, we're not going to outright, especially at like my high school, we're not going to outright bully a person like that, but they wouldn't be accepted as easily into the culture, because it's like our culture of being a guy would be, yeah, we're going to go play football, we're going to go play all these sports, we're going to go do like we're going to talk about girls, we're going to do all this stuff. So it becomes an issue of like being a straight male is its own division, where it's like, okay, yeah, we're a straight male, we want to talk about girls, we want to talk about sports. If you're going to come in and talk about I think it makes people very uncomfortable. So it's like,
yeah, because it's not natural,
right?
And what you're referring to right now is God's original design and intent, and it goes against the original design and intent of a male. But what I'm also hearing you say is that there's hints and reference to these things in the framework of comedy, but not deep conversation. Mm-hmm. Why not deep conversation? Is it because there's a fear of ridicule?
It's fear.
Okay.
It's fear driven of, call it cancel culture, call it this kind of fear that you're going to be put into a position where people are going to almost cancel you, of like, I can't believe you would say something like that. So
there's almost a communication style, like a language between guys, where you can poke fun of a situation like testicular injuries in women's sport. I mean, 5 years ago, who would have even thought of that? But am I correct? Am I drawing the right conclusion here, that by making those jokes, it is really a communication style between the guys on their opinion of it, but it's light. It's not light. Deep.
And that's the thing, is it's different having a one-on-one conversation with a good friend like that. That's where you can have that. But anytime there's
culturally,
anytime there's more than two other guys, everything, like, there's never a deep conversation. You don't share your feelings, you don't share emotions. It just becomes an ability to just relax and kick back and just have fun and goof off and do all this stuff.
Yeah, and I think if you go back, look, all of us graduated high school. All of us, many of us went through the college process of finding the roommate, and nothing is new. The Word of God says nothing's new. But I do think culturally, the way we deal with and handle certain things change. It's not new, Sodom and Gomorrah. It's not new, sexual immorality, but how we deal with it. And I'm really intrigued to how your culture deals with it. And I think if we, it just comes to mind, Dave Chappelle comes to mind, Jamie Foxx comes to mind, and how they spoke about how they dealt with cultural issues in the Black community through comedy. And I think there's a cycle. So what I'm hearing you say here is, we're going to reference it because guys typically don't like to talk about deep stuff. And that's not new to this. That's just historic. And that's probably women's number one complaint, is their husbands don't want to have real conversation. And I argue that right now, the men better start having real conversation.
Amen.
Deep, real conversation. And not just privately, but publicly.
Because they have an obligation to their
We need
children.
it because God made you to be a watchman.
Right.
He made you to be a watchman. He made you to defend women. He made you to defend justice, come against immorality, stand for a righteous society, especially if you're an American, for freedom, liberty, justice for all. He made you a man for that. So it's completely distorting what a man is, and so they ask, what is a woman? I would ask, well, what is a man today?
Right.
Not like I'm confused, but a man can be a woman, and it's just this whole weird movement.
Yeah.
And I think it's co-opting men into this place where they're not speaking up.
Yeah.
Publicly. They'll make a joke here, there, but they're not boldly saying, hey, this is insane.
Yeah. We need more good men and not as many nice guys. Like, the thing is, the world is calling for good men where you need to stick to your morals, you need to stick to your values, you need to be able to stand up for what you know is right. And that comes from the word of God, that comes from your connection with Jesus. Like, that is what we need more than somebody who's going to appease everybody. And the thing that this kind of brings me to is when you look back at how conquerors would conquer different nations, they would take out the strongest men first.
Yes.
And that's what is happening, but it's on a psychological level of making you think. And this is where I get really upset, where an example is Mr. Beast. Do you know?
Yeah.
Krista or Chris, whoever it was.
Built an empire.
Right.
But he's in hot water at the moment.
But the thing that I was kind of getting at is this man, Chris, who has children, is now showing his children that what it means to be a man is you can become a woman. Like that, the confusion, the trauma that would occur. It's like, not only, and that's what you were talking about, how it's this society of self and selfishness of, well, this is what I want for me. It's like, you're not even thinking about what your children are able to view from this. It's gone completely out the window. That's
what I mean with it's like an intoxicating transient state of hypnosis, to where a guy who's a father completely loses perspective of reality of what his job is, and he becomes so self-indulged, so self-focused that he will do something that literally is detrimental to his own children. This is the mothers that's taking their kids to drag shows. They want to be at the drag show. It's popular to take a child with you because you get attention and all the drag queens. And I'm like, you're destroying your child's life for your own sick, twisted desires, your flesh. And you talked about the flesh earlier. You talk about how nations were conquered and how you take the strong men out first. Absolutely. You emasculate the strong guys. You tell them that they are fascist. You tell them that they are Nazis, homophobes. You tell them they can't speak about anything related to a woman or pregnancy or abortion. Meanwhile, the guy was 50% of the equation.
Yeah.
The egg didn't fertilize itself. It needed sperm. So yes, I can be in the conversation 100%. It's funny enough that when the judge rules in a divorce, the guy's got to pay child support.
Right.
But he can't speak into, whether the child should live or not. It's so ironic where they want child support. And if the same girl will say she wants child support from the same guy whose baby she just aborted, a second child. And it's this weird, complete, spirit of stupor. But South Africa has a history. I don't know if you can pull this up. See if you can pull this up for me, Rebecca. Dan, don't go to that shot until we got it. But pull up for me the Battle of Blood River, South Africa. So here's what happens. The Brits, as historically they did, they colonized nations, even the U.S. They come in and they take over the Brits and the French. And then the Brits normally won because they had the larger army. They would take out the strongest men. In South Africa's history, though, it didn't work because the guys were they were warriors. These guys were fighters, big time.
Right.
So what they did previous to Blood River is while the men were on the battlefield, they split their legion, and they wrapped around and they captured the women and children. Captured them, raped them, threw them in a concentration camp, and then they told the men, if you don't surrender, we take your women. I think we're at a place right now where American men, the strong guys, were picked off. They were neutered, silenced. We're in a place now where they are literally saying, we're taking your women and your children. And my concern is that the American men are not seeing it. They're not saying, wait a minute, we got to fight like...
Especially my generation, because my generation is embedded in the phone. They're embedded in the reels that are going to show them exactly what they want. It's like, if you ignore your emotions and you ignore how you're feeling and you just want to turn off, which is a great way to do it, is to go onto your phone and just mindlessly scroll, because it turns off the portion of your brain that is hurting. So when you do that, you stop acknowledging all this. And the thing is, what our society is telling you is that's okay. Focus on yourself. You need this. You need this. You need to be able to feel your own things. And it's like, what about our children? And that's a huge thing that people are ignoring, is what about the children? It's like everyone is so concerned with, okay, well, yeah, that person has become transgender, but does it hurt me? If it doesn't hurt me, if it doesn't affect me, then that's on them. So it doesn't affect me. But it's like when your children are looking at kids shows that are, promoting this stuff, then they grow up and they're confused. Like, I was confused enough by watching pornography. I can't imagine if there was more sexualization outside of just the pornography. If it was on like SpongeBob, if it was on this kind of stuff.
Disney.
Yeah, Disney. What Disney has become at this point.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's complete indoctrination. But think about this. Not that I want you to necessarily, I want you to go play basketball and have an incredible college career. Okay. You're 17, turning 18, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's just say 18. Okay. It's likely that 10 years from now, you're a father.
Mm-hmm.
You know how fast 10 years is?
Mm-hmm.
Buddy, in your life, maybe you go, well, that's half my life. In the grand scheme of things, it's not.
Right.
It's so quick. I will ask every Gen Zer today that's 18, when you're 28 and you're a father and you turn 32 and you have a 4-year-old, do you really want to deal with a child who's a porn addict? It's a absolute nightmare for a parent.
And also a child who is so uncomfortable in their own skin that they feel like they have to change their gender.
And society completely demonizing them if they don't just give up to Satan, give in. And this is the consequence. And you're so right. There's no thought pattern at the moment into reality and consequence, because they're stuck in scroll, dopamine, self-satisfaction. And these giant issues around them are happening. Blood River. Just pick up Battle of Blood River, just at Wikipedia even. So here's what happens. The Brits come in, they colonize, they take the women, they rape the women. The men rile up and they say, heck no. And you've got, the Battle of Blood River, 16 December 1838 was fought on the bank of the Nkomi River in what is called KwaZulu-Natal today. 464 Boers, pioneers, fur trackers, 464 strong men. We had more than that, but many were neutered. Many were, hey, they're going to take the women and children. Don't fight, give in.
Mm-hmm.
464 strong men, pioneers, led by Andries Pretorius, an estimated 10,000 to 15,000 Zulu Impi Empire attacked them. 464 guys that day stood and fought for their women and children to the point where the river turned red with blood of the MPs, and 464 guys defeated 15,000 because they said, if we don't stand today, the Battle of Blood River today, for our women and children, because they were going after the women and children. The Brits co-opted the Zulus, gave them weapons and said, take the women, take the children, go. You'll weaken the men, right? If you do not stand, I don't speak my language of Afrikaans today. I don't have a heritage today. If those 460, right. Gideon's 300, if 464 guys did not say, hey, bring the ox wagons, put it in a circle, and hell has no fury.
Amen.
We're winning today. Right now, yes, I'm talking about people died, but it was a war, but they were fighting for the family, for women and children, and they conquered and defeated, and a nation is liberated and set free.
Right.
464 guys. You've got more people than in your high school.
Mm-hmm. And I think it kind of shows how across history we had these times where men needed to step up, where men had purpose of, you need to fight the war, you need to fight. And now we're at a point where there isn't the physical war happening anymore, where you don't need to go to Vietnam. You don't need to go to these areas where you have to fight
or have a weapon.
Yes, fight for your country. But what people are not seeing is the mental war that's occurring, and they're not standing up. And they're saying, okay, somebody else will do it, but that is the role of a man. And the thing is, all of this media and the news and what it's telling you, it's intentional in trying to neuter the men. That's what it's trying to do, of trying to convince you that, women and men are equal. when women and men can compete in the same sports, when it's not true. Men are designed biologically, evolutionarily, to be stronger and to be less connected to their emotions in order to protect the women and children, to protect their posterity so that they can grow and, create more of this. And the thing too is the evil one doesn't want more children. You can see the decline in how
it's after God's kingdom, after his legacy. Genesis tells us there's enmity, there's war between Satan and the offspring of seed. There's a war here. We have a war.
The most vulnerable.
And the only thing needed for evil to exist is for good men to do nothing.
Right.
We don't need nice guys. We need kind, strong warriors. Can you pull up the power of the tongue? For me, scripture and power of the tongue. Sharpen the two-edged sword, life and death in the tongue. Pull that up for me. I want to give people a biblical reference. What you're saying is so powerful, Jeff. It is essential right now that young men your age speak. Which is why I said, please come on the show. Speak. Your age bracket needs to see that, okay, it's not just our dads and the old school. You need to speak. You need to speak. It's
not something
truth.
easy either. And I don't want people to think that this is something easy, as if I'm not terrified to do this. But something that I read moments, a couple days ago, was when you have that fear to jump, when you're afraid to jump, that is the exact moment when you need to. Because there's something on the other side that the evil one does not want you to accomplish. And that's another thing. Another quote is, when the devil wants you focused on your past, it's because God has something in your future he does not want you to see.
100%. It's fleecing you. It's putting wool over your eyes. It's masking things. This is Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Here's the deal. You just said it's not the war. Keep that up for me. It's not Vietnam. It's not the war with guns. And it's a war of the tongue. It's silencing truth or releasing truth. The war today is words. It's information war. We could say technology, and people are so focused on AI, and I go, hey, worry less about AI today and more about what your friend is saying or not saying, what the men are saying or not saying. Are they coming in agreement with evil? And that literally means silence. That's agreement, because
look at what's happening in Canada with how there's laws being passed about 100%. Misgendering and how you can get punished for this. Where is the freedom in that? And if people don't think that that's coming from America, then you need to understand that if you let it, and if you stay silent, and if you just let things go by and think that America is safe from this for some reason, that America, which was the strongest country, that of course that's going to be the number one target. If that is not coming from America, then
delusional. It's delusional. Yeah. No, it's coming. And at times I think we start the pilot light, and then other nations run with it, and then it comes back to us, and we started this crazy conversation about what is a woman. No other nation on earth had that conversation. Now it's starting to circulate, and it comes back and it smacks us in the face, and we're paying a dear price for it.
One of the things that I was thinking about with the power of the tongue, and it brought me back to my sophomore year when we were in lockdown, and we'd come back and everyone was forced to be 6 feet apart in class and wear masks. And in those moments, I remember my first period was the largest class I think I've ever had at JP2. And it was a computer science class, and I couldn't talk to a soul in that class because everybody was either buried in their computers with their masks on, or if I were to try and whisper to somebody, it was impossible. I couldn't. And I tried to take a stand. I tried to take off my mask and walk around the halls, and I seriously was called into the dean's office and disciplined and told, either you put on a mask or you're not coming back to the school. That was the bottom line. That's what they were telling me. It's fear. You are not going to be able to speak to others.
And lies.
Fear and lies.
Go together, yeah.
It was demonic. You said that with the lockdown, and it's so true because it isolated everybody, and that's when the evil one was able to work. That was when all this stuff online, and it's like you weren't able to have a voice. Because not only were you censored by being stuck in your home and not being able to go out and talk with people, but then when you tried to speak something about something on social media that wasn't quote unquote acceptable, then you were canceled and then banned.
I'll say this to you, man. It's so demonic. It was literally led by Satan. I was on the Blaze network throughout the pandemic. We went in every week. We're on set. We're talking, and Sarah Gonzalez and I have conversations. Glenn Beck, we're talking, and they go, Jaco, what do you think the real thing? I said that it's the collateral damage that we need to be talking about. This is not about wearing a mask. This is about silencing people. This is literally about this is about silencing. Well, why did they close the doors to the church? they wanted to shut down truth.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about the church building, because they allowed the BLM marches to go on.
Mm-hmm.
You could throw a BLM march right next to the church in the parking lot, and you could have 5,000 people without a mask on, and that was okay. They were not spewing truth. They were spewing lies and hate.
Mm-hmm.
Burning
going
buildings
on
down.
rampages.
But truth, you got to put a mask on for truth. So you put a mask on people, you social distance. It's a beautiful model to silence the tongue, to say, don't think, don't speak. We'll think for you. We'll speak for you.
And that's in the thing about something like BLM, the slogan. It's something that you can't argue against. But what has happened with that organization?
No, it's diabolical.
It's
well,
diabolical.
You see now, no, they've squandered money. It's a complete sham. The whole thing was a sham. Masks are a sham. We knew it at the time. Even from a scientific level, a mask can't even stop the particles if they were to even be there, which they were not. But here's the deal, though. You make a point like Black Lives Matter. Of course, all lives matter. But the second you said all lives matter, then Black Lives Matter said, oh, you don't care about black people. Well, wait a minute. All means all.
Yeah.
Why do you not care about other people? Because again, it's the self. It's a me.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't the black community. The Black Lives Matter movement was driven by Caucasian individuals. Most of those
Black
marches,
community was targeted by
100% co-opted into it.
Mm-hmm.
And they do this consistently. And this is how Satan works. Talk to me a little bit, if you can, Jeff, about, if you're willing, about the mental condition that you went through when you realized, hey, listen, I got a problem with pornography.
Right. So it really started. So I was shown pornography at age 7. And from there, it gets a little blurry because I don't remember every single instance, but I know that probably around 10 was when I watched it again, when I went on my parents' computer and I looked it up. And then it was really around 11 or 12, I would say, when the addiction began of, I had a phone. So now I had unlimited access. And the thing was, at that time, I didn't understand what was happening. And what you brought up earlier of, imagine showing pornography to a 7-year-old is literally just inviting a demon into their life. That's exactly what it is. And I didn't understand that demon had taken its hold, and I had no clue. I had no idea. Mm-hmm. I had no idea that this was something evil, but the lies were starting to spin of, okay, this is good. This is how you can deal with stress. This is how you can get pleasure, not happiness, but pleasure. And so for the next 5 years until I was 17, 16, 17, well, I'm 17 now, but for the next, from around 11 to 16, it was a serious addiction of, if it wasn't once every 3 days, it was once a day. And then during COVID, it was at its worst of once a day, maybe 2 times a day. And I remember seeing a lot of jokes from a lot of guys on different social media platforms of how much they were masturbating during COVID. And it was just a joke of like, oh yeah, I'm doing it again and again and again. And this was the kind of mentality of, okay, it's not bad if everybody else is doing it. This is the kind of mentality that comes about of
social norm.
Yeah, I'm not alone in this, so it must be okay. And I never really understood why it wasn't filling the hole in my heart. There was still something missing. I was still craving something more. Once that wasn't enough, I started drinking a lot more, partying, and then smoking nicotine. And the drug of nicotine became kind of like a safety thing of like, I had to have it on me at all times. And I got caught by my mom multiple times, and it like drove a hole in my heart of like, this isn't who I am. Why am I prioritizing nicotine over a relationship with my mom? My mom wouldn't come into my room anymore. My parents wouldn't come in. Like there was a boundary that I had put up, and I was protecting nicotine. And I didn't even realize, but that was like, at the time, nicotine was at the top of the mound of addiction and trauma that had occurred. And so once I decided, I remember the moment I quit nicotine was when I had woken up for like the 5th day in a row, and it was the first thing that I grabbed in the morning. And I remember smoking it, and the stomach ache that I would get, and it was like, it would curb my appetite, and I started wanting to do more athletics. I wanted to get more serious. And so I needed to put that away. So I finally got rid of that. And then I was like, okay, I can't be smoking anymore. It's killing my lungs. So I stopped doing that, and it was like, okay, yeah, now I'm getting hungover and I'm not able to work out as effectively. So I stopped doing that. And then it was the pornography. And I was like, okay, this isn't there's nothing physically like draining from me from this, but there's something mental that is far worse than anything else, far worse. it would put me out for more than a day. I would watch pornography, masturbate, and not only was it mentally draining, it was also a trigger. It was traumatized. It was bringing up that past trauma of being shown it for the first time. It was bringing that back up. And
again and again and again. And it's then, trauma on trauma.
And then the shame would come over of, why did you do this again? Why? Like,
because it's an emotional and a spiritual exercise and a physical exercise. It's all of it. You know, smoking is not necessarily have the spiritual component, but sex does.
Sex does.
And so did you in the time, okay, you were caught smoking nicotine. Were you ever caught watching porn, or did that not happen?
I was never caught in the act ever. And I remember one time my parents or my dad brought me in and was like, I saw you were on X videos. He didn't, the thing is at that age, because he's raised in the 80s, he didn't understand that, like, he basically thought it was an accident that I somehow stumbled upon it.
Yeah.
And he brought it up and he goes, hey, like, you don't need to be on there. Like, let me know if you ever have an urge to get on there again. Like, kind of saying, like, we can have that talk when that time comes. My perspective from that age was he wanted to show me more of that when I asked him. Like, that's what I thought he was saying, was like, if I ever wanted to go on there again, I'll let him know and he can show me.
Wow. Okay, let's park. This is fascinating stuff. Let's park this conversation here for a second, because we're talking about, okay, all right, I'm going to ask you this question, and we're going to come back to that. The process right after watching porn, masturbation, the voice that was talking to you, shame, doubt, condemnation, what was that mental battle like? And was that the same voice that then told you, okay, so my dad, instead of, hey, he wants to have this conversation so I don't do it, he wants to show it to me. It's almost like a...
Yeah, it was, I mean, I can talk on because I still have that whenever, and this is something that I'm still struggling with, because it's only been about a year since I've understood that this is something that I don't want to be a part of. So it's like this giant demon that got built up, and now there's this little ball of good that's trying to, like,
overcome evil. Yeah.
And so lost my train of thought. Well, okay, yeah. So it's only been about that much time. And so when I do end up, the thing is, when you try and take it on your own and say, I'm never going to do it again, you just tempt the flesh, and the flesh is inevitably going to crave it so much so that it's impossible to stop it. You have to give it to God. But I didn't know that at the time. Was that
a mental battle, like conversation mentally?
It's really, I mean, it's more of like, yeah, it's a mental of, I'm strong enough to do this on my own. I've been able to overcome nicotine. I've been able to overcome weed and alcohol, all this stuff. Like, I can do this. I can do this on my own. And this is something so much stronger than anything I've ever had to experience. So the thing that'll happen is when I do end up failing and watching pornography and masturbating, it's like I wrote down one time in a journal the before, during, and after thoughts that I was having. And before, it was, I just remember thinking, like, all these adjectives of, like, this is so hot, like, I can't wait to do this. And then there was, like, one thought of, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Like, no, I don't want this. It's like, yeah, but I do want it. Like, all this stuff. It was like this internal battle, but it was like the version of me that didn't want it was so much smaller than the version that did, because for so long, I've been doing this. And then during it was like, okay, yeah, there was a release, there was pleasure, but almost within like 2 minutes,
it
comes off.
It's so fleeting.
It's so fleeting. And then afterwards, it's like, okay, what have I done? Why did I do this again? Like, and then
and you would have those thoughts.
Yeah,
I don't want to do this. And I tell people all the time, an opioid, when they get high, they're high for hours. Mm-hmm. This is not like that. This is minutes.
Yeah,
minutes, and it's gone. It's fleeting, and then it's like, okay, now what?
I would say it's different for me from age 7 to age 15, how I reacted to watching porn and masturbating, as opposed to more recently. Now it would be, or before, it was as if completely uncontrollable. Like, once the desire hits, I'm not the same person.
There was a mental switch.
Switch. I'm not the same person. Something has overcome me, and it's like I go to the bathroom, I watch the porn, I masturbate, and then we, in culture, it's called post-nut clarity, is what guys will talk about. And we joke about it and say, oh yeah, post-nut clarity, like, it's almost normalizing the idea of saying, what have I done? Like, this isn't
Yeah.
what I wanted. And at a young age, you don't really understand it. You know that it's wrong. You know that it's bad, but it's like it's really confusing because once you're done, for me, it would be like you go to an incognito tab because you don't want people to know about this. And it doesn't even matter that, like, I knew that the incognito tab didn't mean anything, but it was like, I didn't want that on my history. I didn't want to ever see something like that, because the trigger enough, if I type a P and Pornhub comes up, I'm going to immediately, like, I would immediately switch over and have to go do it. So it was,
and that is how violent it gets.
yes,
It is, and the algorithm learns it because it's learned behavior, you know, and it's in the feed, and it's just going to keep bringing more and more. And so when you type a P, it almost just pops up, auto fills it out for you. Yeah.
And the thing was, it would be the second that I would masturbate and the porn video would still be going on, I would look at it, sick feeling it in my stomach, and then I'd have to immediately close out and completely distract myself, because I can't, if I were to sit and not get back on my phone, not do something, and just sit there and like think about it's not something holy. So I don't want to look at myself. I don't want to feel those feelings. It's like, I don't want God to be seeing me right now. Sin is the absent, like you're turning away from God.
It's literally, Rebecca, do me a favor. Pull up scripture on Eve giving Adam the apple and the actions immediately after. And this is, you literally just, you might as well have been Adam in the Garden of Eden when you just said that. And I want people to understand the correlation, because I want people to understand, Jeff, that they're fighting Satan. Satan, when they're fighting porn. It is a weapon and a device of Satan.
And that's the thing that people don't understand, is you cannot do it on your own. You can't. You have to give it to God, because it is not your battle to fight. And the battle's already been won with Jesus dying for us on the cross. That is something that Jesus did for us.
100%.
When you try and do it on your own, when you try and overcome the evils of Satan, and you try and overcome this porn addiction, you can't do it on your own. No,
wait. Which is why Jesus had to come. So we're in Genesis 3. And in Genesis 3, 6, Eve takes the apple. She gives it to Adam. Adam eats. In 8, they're in the garden. Now remember, they're naked at this time. Completely naked, right? They eat of the apple and their eyes open up. They realize we're naked, right? And they do the following. You just said it. You want to go hide. You said, I don't want God to see me now. Immediately, right? So they do what? And they heard the sound of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees in the garden. They were like, I don't want God to see me right now. They literally were hiding because they just partook of the sin. You just said it. In that immediate moment right after, post not clarity, oh gosh, incognito, don't want to see it, delete it. I didn't want to remind myself that I just did this. Then the Lord called to Adam and said to him, where are you? Not that I didn't know where he was. He wanted Adam to self-reflect, like, hey, you've never hid from me before. Why are you hiding from me now? Because he wanted Adam to reflect. And what you're talking about, Jeff, is guys don't want to reflect on that because it's painful. You don't want to look at yourself that way. You don't want to see that. You don't want God to see you that way. So he basically says to Adam, where are you? So Adam would self-reflect. So he said, I heard your voice in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. And then he said, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree of which I commanded you that you shall not eat? For people who are watching, Jeff, who are not believers, who don't read the Word of God, who don't read the Bible, and now I'm reading this, and they go, oh, wait a minute. What Adam experienced in the Garden of Eden was like post-nut clarity, post-sin clarity. Immediately, yes, this is biblical. You're fighting the same demon when you're combating porn as Satan and Eve did in the garden. It's the same master of destruction. It's Satan. Using sex, super powerful. Super, super powerful. You know, and we always say this in the movie Sex Nation, which I want people to go watch. Watch Sex Nation. Go to sexnationfilm.com. We say this. There's very little that made it out of the garden. The Garden of Eden had a ton of stuff in it, but very little makes it out of it. But sex and marriage makes it out of it. Relationship, family makes it out of the garden, right? Most all good things stayed in the garden. We're hoping to return to Eden, the new Eden, to heaven, God wants to take us back there. But sex and intimacy makes it out of the garden because God uses it to procreate. And I believe Satan said, great, I can use that tool.
Right.
I'll use that thing to break people. So now where you are now, because you're kind of unique in this sense, though. You're a high-functioning athlete, basketball player. So you have things that occupy your time physically. What about the guy who's not playing sports, who only does video games and porn? I mean, I think for them it's infinitely even more challenging because they don't have that outlet. At least you can go to the court and really get some dopamine firing, testosterone is firing. You're on the court. You've got some masculinity going on. I mean, it's elbows and it's playing one-on-ones and whatever. But for the guys that don't have that, those are the guys I'm seeing just absolutely demolished. They fall through the trenches. They just there's no return. I don't know if you see some of those guys in school that are not active. Do you see that kind of a trend that they struggle more?
100% that they struggle more. I feel like because there was a time in my life when I was not playing any sports and I was playing video games and I was smoking and doing all this stuff, and I had no identity. I didn't know who I was. I was lost and angry. And the thing is, when somebody comes to you and says, hey, you need to get your life together, you need to start working out, you need to start, you don't want to listen to them. It makes you angry because you're already angry with yourself, and it's like somebody's telling you the things that you're already shaming yourself for not doing. And that's where it becomes an issue, is you have to take, and right when I was saying of when it feels the most scary to take the jump, that is exactly when you need to jump.
Yeah.
And when it feels so scary to go out, and if you really like basketball and you've lost your love for the sport and you started sitting on the couch a lot and you've started doing all this stuff and you're worried if you go out there, it's like people are going to make fun of you, your shot is off, you're lazy, you're slow. It's like, who cares? God is the one who you should be trying to glorify, and he's given you these gifts. He's given you this desire to go play, and you have 2 legs, you have 2 arms, you have this desire and love for the sport. It's like you need to go out and do it for yourself and for God. And that's where, accomplishment really comes in. Accomplishment is not something tactile or physical. Like when you say, oh, man, I'm so accomplished, I have this beautiful car, I have this beautiful house. It's like the people who really feel the most accomplished is, I'm so accomplished, I have this wonderful connection with my family. That's true accomplishment, where it's like, yeah, you could be going through a rough time, but you go home and your family cares for you because you cared for them when they were in a hard time. So it's like, it's that same kind of, I guess what I'm really getting at is, in order to start feeling, that identity within yourself, it does begin with God, but it also begins with learning to allow yourself to be loved by God.
Yeah. 100%.
And you have to learn to love yourself.
100%.
And
that's a great command. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Everybody today wants to talk about love your neighbor, but they hate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. You cannot extend unconditional love to somebody if you don't love yourself. And I'm not talking about narcissism. To truly love yourself, you must love yourself the way God loves you.
Mm-hmm.
So, which means you must have a relationship with God where he brings a revelation to you about how he sees Jeff, how he loves Jeff. And then when you come into agreement with that, man, you can extend unconditional love to a neighbor, to someone who's struggling. You said something earlier that I just want to recap real quick, which was fascinatingly powerful for me. You said that you were sacrificing, that wasn't your word, but I'm using that word, sacrificing or trading a relationship with your mom for defending nicotine, for instance. Just let's dive into that just for a second. How often the young generation is sacrificing real relationship for fake porn relationship.
Well, the biggest thing, one of the most popular topics on all these porn websites is incest porn, of step parent, step sister, step all this stuff, where it's like, that is a direct attack by the evil one to attack that relationship that you have with your mother, that you have with your father, that you have with your siblings. Like that is directly, sacrificing, okay, yeah, I'm going to take this pleasure over this happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only when you really, because I know that a lot of people have shame about it, where it's, if they go and they watch some form of porn that's incest porn, and they're like, I can't have a relationship with my family anymore because it's distorted in my brain. You have to not allow the devil's lies to make you sacrifice that relationship. You have to go out and be active and be proactive to make that connection, because at a certain point it does become a little bit of work, because you have to actively love that person, and then that love starts to be reciprocated, and then you start to form that bond, and then it's through that strength One of the church's callings is a call to family. So once you have that strength in your family, then that's when your whole family is allowing themselves to be loved by God. They're dishing out this unconditional love that they're getting from God. And then from there, that's when you can start, really taking that support from your family and moving it towards your own heart, where you can break away from porn, where you can break away from these things because you have this strong unit. You know what joy is. You know what happiness is, because when you go and you're having a family dinner, sit down dinner, and you're able to just open up and be emotional and talk and feel that, then that's what I've noticed overall is the more that I've found true joy with my faith, with God, with my friendships, like true friendships and true relationships with my family, the more that I've found that, the less of an effect that porn has had, because I've started to see it more as this is just pleasure. It's nothing close to happiness. It's
well,
worldly.
your eyes are opening.
Earthly.
Yeah, your spiritual eyes are opening. Your eyes are opening, and you're grabbing onto things that are real, real satisfaction, happiness, not joy. I think it's a great point you made. I know people are going to comment on, man, what a thoughtful 17-year-old. But I want to remind folks, a thoughtful 17-year-old that's still fighting the battle. This is not just magically one morning you wake up because you said, and poof, it's gone. Addiction is addiction. And so how the breaking point for you, the tipping point for you about, what, I need help. What was that moment like in where you'd say, okay, that's the moment where real change happened? Was it a moment, or was it more a progressive move away from the thought pattern of I need porn satisfies, etc.?
Well, I can speak recently. There's been a huge breakthrough that I've made of surrendering to the will of God as opposed to my will. That has been the biggest breakthrough that I've come to know, of understanding that it's not my life, it's God's life, and he needs to work through me. So when I'm at that point where I'm thinking, okay, I want to go watch pornography, I'm feeling super stressed out, this day has been super hard, almost you get this mentality of I deserve it, I deserve this break. That's when I've started turning to, okay, what would God do with my life right now? Well, if he could come down and guide his hand to where he wants me to go right now, what would he do? And when I'm on my phone and I'm about to scroll through and I think of that, I go, okay, I'm going to set my phone down and I'm just going to sit. I'm going to sit and listen. And all of these racing thoughts start to slow down a little bit, because I'm not allowing them to just go rampant everywhere. I'm sitting with them and thinking, okay, what are these thoughts? Okay, something really stressful happened today. Somebody said something hurtful. I'm going to think about that. I'm going to give it to God and let it go. I'm going to move on.
There you go.
And then once that those racing thoughts start to die down, it's like I don't have that desire to watch pornography anymore, because I don't need it.
Yes, sir.
I have something stronger, something that, because when I do end up watching pornography, if that does happen, it's like now not only do I have those racing thoughts from before, now it's all been piled on top of with pornography, which is just another addition.
Shame, condemnation, guilt, remorse, regret. I say this to folks, as short as the sexual high orgasm lasts, 30 seconds, whatever that is, and within 2 minutes it's gone, it's fleety, the dopamine wears off, and you go, what have I done? As short as that is, if people would just be patient, the attack is also not a long attack. When it comes on, it's pretty quickly, and people go, hey, if I'll sit my phone down, what you just said, and just don't move. Just start talking to God in that moment. Denzel Washington makes a quote, and it's not his. He's a quote from a quote, but he uses this, and it's scriptural, it's biblical. And he says, I realize this too shall pass. If I sit and wait on the Lord, this shall pass. The temptation will go. And it's also habit forming. If out of habit, when the temptation comes, you put the phone down, you go to God, you vent, voice your frustration of the day. Because the frustration wasn't sex, that's an outlet. It's a false numbing mechanism. If you would take the real frustration to God, here's what actually happens. You're going to walk away from porn. It will pass. You'll overcome a drug, but you're building a relationship with God. It's a trust factor. Right. It's like, hey, I trust that you can listen to me right now. I'm bringing this to you. I'm mad. I'm frustrated. I'm hurt. I feel rejected. Mad at this person. I'm going to forgive them and give it to you. And so it goes. And it's not different with alcohol. I have a question for you. This may come out of left field for you. Have you heard of or have you seen activity or a rise in activity in your age demographic, let's just say sophomores through seniors, okay, let's focus there, of cocaine
No.
in high school?
I think that there was a time when I was on this kind of teeter-totter of, okay, I've started drinking, I've started smoking nicotine, I've started smoking weed, and then somebody offered me shrooms, and I said, no, I'm gonna go a little bit farther. Like, I knew that for me, at least, like, that was just something that if I were to partake, I wouldn't. I knew that at my age, I was like, it's going to be too detrimental. My mind is still growing. My mind is still forming. I'm making these connections of understanding, like, okay, I want to start valuing my body. I want to be an athlete. I want to do these things. I want to glorify God. And so I kind of took that as, okay, I need to take a little bit of a step back. That was kind of the first
step
time.
too far. Yeah.
But I have heard a lot about how cocaine is way more prevalent than any of us thought it was.
Yeah, especially in high school right now. We're finding it, in areas like South Lake. The cocaine dealers were talking about how they were running through supply during prom season. But here's what they found is that it's a drinking drug for the high schoolers. So it's called wet cocaine or dry cocaine. And so do you take cocaine when you're drinking wet, or do you just take it dry? Now, dry is far worse than someone that's way down the line, but they drink, and it's almost social recreation of cocaine.
I've heard a lot of people do that because they don't. I've heard a lot of people do that with nicotine too, because then it's just completely associated with drinking. It's just something that I do at the party. I do it over here.
Correct.
And it's like, if I start doing it introducing it to my own life, then that's where it becomes a problem for them. And I can see some truth in that, because the thing about something like nicotine, where when I was smoking a lot, it's like I could do that on the drive to school. I could do it when I was at school. I could do it. You can't do that with drinking. You can't. You can't just bring a handle of Tito's to school. It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
And you can't operate a vehicle. So I can see why people are doing that. But
there's a visual reflection, right? When someone's intoxicated, you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
If someone smoked, you could smell it, but that's not hard to mask. I mean, you can mask it with cologne, and if someone watched porn, you can't see it at all.
Not at all.
It's easy to hide.
Mm-hmm.
You could watch it in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. I heard. So yeah, that was my freshman year. Somebody brought it up that a student had been just watching porn in class, and somebody just walked by and just saw it. And that's where it becomes a big issue. Is
AirPod in the ear.
Yeah.
Or not even no sound. I mean. And that's why it's such a violent drug, because it is accessible. We have statistics of men watching porn during church service, of Pornhub's analytics on the church, on how during church hours, now not knowing if the guy's in church or not, but how high porn use is on Pornhub between 9 and noon on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Church hours.
That's another big thing too that I've found is when I miss church, whether it's like it's for legitimate reasons of like the other day we were in Tennessee, and my mom was feeling ill, and there was only one service for the whole day, and everybody slept in past it. It was like, okay, we couldn't make it. I didn't have a car to go. It was like 30-40 minutes away. And a legitimate reason, but it was like, once that happened, that's when the evil one gets in my ear and is like, well, you didn't go to church, so you might as well just go watch. Like, seriously, it's just like, you might as well just go sin.
Because he is the evil judge. He's the one that condemns. He's the one that lies. And that's exactly what happens. Or when you do something absolutely unrelated to porn and you make a mistake, you sin. He will come and say, well, you might as well do this.
Right. And
I feel like he's constantly driving people like that to sexual immorality, because it's such a violent drug. There's a real physiological reaction in your body.
Mm-hmm. And the devil wants to convince you that temptation alone is sin.
Correct.
But even Jesus was tempted.
Temptation is not sin. Acting upon it. Temptation is not sin. It's acting upon it. But just touch on that real quick, because I really think, and I think we spoke about this when we had that coffee, I really feel like Gen Z have almost made the two synonymous. Temptations, I might as well. If I was tempted, I might as well do it. And they don't understand the separation. Like, no, even when tempted, you can choose God in the temptation. And then Scripture says Satan must flee from you. It must go. The thoughts must go. The temptation must go, or you just give into it. I
mean, yeah, one of the powerful things that I heard on this was Jesus in the desert never said to Satan that the things that he was tempting him with were not his to give. He knew that the devil had these things to give, but Jesus just said no. He just denied the temptation.
Yeah.
But the devil wants to convince us that if you are tempted, then you are already going to sin. So it happens often with
almost as if we're the ones tempting ourselves,
Right.
Like, no, this is an attack from the evil one. Recognize it as that. Understand that you have a nemesis, you have an enemy that's bringing something to you, saying, hey, partner with this demon for 5 minutes. And the answer should be, well, no, I've done it. And I know how I feel horrible after the fact. And it's a lie. It's artificial. It doesn't help me.
Yeah.
And I think highlighting voices like yours, I could have this conversation for days and not stop and just keep going on and on. You're a champion, Jeff. You're always welcome here. I want to follow up with you and see college campus, how things are going. We'll be praying for you and with you. Stay in the fight, stay close, build that relationship with God, and just speak. Talk about it. I mean, and help guys. Guys need help because guys don't ask for help. I mean, just close with that for me, if you don't mind. How often do guys come to you and say, or do they come and say, hey, I've got a problem? I mean, do they?
I think it's happened one single time. And I can't even remember who, but I remember it happening one, but no.
So the guys are basically in misery, dealing with this in obscurity on their own and not having help. So I want to encourage anybody watching. Jeff is a 17-year-old man of God, a son of God, a guy who has faced some serious trial and is here to talk about it as an overcomer, sharing incredible wisdom from a young mind beyond his years to help. And I want to encourage guys, reach out, ask for help. We've got amazing resources, whether it's Porn Free by John Bevere or whether it is just talking to somebody, having a confidant. I want to encourage all the young guys watching, get a trusted friend, sit down and have real conversation. Real conversation. You heard Jeff say, you cannot do this by yourself. You're not going to will yourself out of this. You need a revelation of God. You need a revelation of purpose, why he created you. Sex is not evil. It's not. Satan's contorted it. Porn will not satisfy you ever. I'll just drop this nugget in your mind. Every single predator and pedophile we've ever been involved with arresting or rescuing victims from were all porn addicts. There's no such thing as a pedophile or a predator that's not it starts with pornography. It destroys purpose. It destroys life. I want to remind you guys that Patriot Mobile is the #1 Christian conservative cell phone network in the United States. They do not fund Planned Parenthood like most of the other cell phone carriers. They are for life. They are for fighting for the liberty and justice of children. They stand with us. They help us rescue children from trafficking. Give them a try. Same towers, same service, amazing team, Glenn Story and his team. And they will actually buy you out of your contract. So check out Patriot Mobile. Go to patriotmobile.com and mention the bottom line. You'll get free activation. And also, if you're going to drink coffee, don't smoke, drink coffee. Drink Storyville coffee. Why? Because every single cup of coffee you drink helps us rescue a child. It's that simple. Starbucks is not in this fight to save children. Storyville coffee is. So spend your money wisely. Why not drink a better coffee, #1 roaster in the U.S., and make your dollar count for something good, something godly, an amazing Christian-led company as well that fights for the safety of children. Jeff, you're a champion. You're welcome here. I want to stay in touch, hear more, take this attitude onto that campus, into that basketball team.
Amen.
I promise you the team will win more if the guys don't deal with these vices and they're not distracted and numb. And the athletes, they can't be completely clear of thought. There's no way. If they're stuck in this self-condemnation, in this rut, and then just keep encouraging guys to have real conversation.
Amen.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you for having me.
You're a champ. God bless you. Talk to you guys next time. Thanks.